Hello and welcome to Broken Chess, the show that says if it ain't broke, break it. I'm here with my friend and coworker, Kyle Dawson. Kyle, how are you doing today?
What's up, everybody? I'm doing good.
All right. So you may notice a little bit of maybe some doppelgangers in the recordings here. That's because when we actually played this game, the first time there was some audio issues, so we are screen recording that and dubbing it over now. So you won't be hearing our thought processes as they happen, but we'll be kind of going through the version of the game and what we were thinking at the time. Um, all right, so Kyle, since you invented this game, why don't you give the folks a rundown as to how it goes?
Yeah, so I randomly thought of this. Basically, it's shapeshifter chess. Whenever you capture a piece becomes the piece that you captured. So, for example, if you take a pawn with a bishop, that bishop becomes a pawn. So you wouldn't really want to do that.
No, no, indeed. I think we were both really surprised as the direction this took, and we'll go into that with you as the game unfolds. So you see kind of the classic opening chess move by myself. I'm white in this game, kind of countering with his pawn, but
Yeah, so I
you know,
play knight to e4. He plays e5. Play knight to c3. Hard to Discord flips the image, so it's kind of hard to know what I just played.
um, right. So you did pawn. You're black, so you did pawn to
I did e4.
d5. No, 5, and then you just did bishop to g4, and now yeah. So I did pawn to f3 to counter that. So obviously, even in a regular chess game, he probably wouldn't capture that pawn because it would immediately get captured by my pawn behind it. But especially in this game, he's got to move it away because that pawn, even if he captures me, then he becomes a target and becomes a bishop, and it's more dangerous. Um, Also, the reason that I haven't moved my knight to take his pawn there on d5 because then that knight would become a pawn again. And here we see the piece exchange starting to happen with taking one pawn, which you could say becomes a pawn, but of course that's uh, not a change in any kind of class of piece. It's still the same. And the exchange could keep on going on for a while here, but it doesn't look like either of us were too aggressive with it. So Kyle, do you remember what you were thinking at this moment? Sorry.
I'm just still messed up by the fact that Discord flips the image. So because I was on the left as white, and so the
No,
pawn
you
on
were black.
I was white. Look at when next time black plays a move, look at the sleeve. It's your sleeve.
All right. Oh yeah, because you were short sleeves. I
Yeah.
was. All right. That's
So that white pawn in the center is an e4 pawn. So it looks, yeah, it's all flip.
all right. That's embarrassing.
I wish I could flip the image. Oh,
Yeah.
you
So
know what it is? It's because when you share your webcam, it flips the webcam, but when you stream like from your screen, it doesn't flip it.
okay. All right. So I'm moving my bishop back to safety there to not risk it turning into a pawn, um, and not risking you get a third bishop. Now I don't know how you feel, but the other kind of two pieces in play besides pawns there were knights and bishops,
Mm-hmm.
and I know in chess they're valued the same as 3 points apiece. Do you have
Mm-hmm.
a preference for one over the other?
I personally, well, it depends on the situation. I generally regard the bishop as like 3.5, but
Yeah,
in the right scenario, like it's tough. Knights can be worth more. Just depends on the board state, I think.
yeah, absolutely. I think certainly if there's more traffic, knights can be more valuable because they
Exactly, yeah.
can jump over all of it. Yeah. And I think probably in some of these broken games, we'll discover ways in which the knights can be like super valuable and ways which they're not valuable at all. Um, but I would say here, I mean, certainly at this point of the game, I would rather have an extra bishop than an extra knight.
Yeah,
So I
for
was
sure.
certainly trying to make sure to prevent you from getting that. But I mean, really, the name of this game is uh, to get as many pawns to become something other than pawns as possible.
Right there, when we were pointing at that square, I think we were talking about me letting you advance
Oh,
your pawn.
yeah. So this was a really interesting. I wonder if you could go into the strategy now that it's because you were saying you couldn't see a downside in letting my pawn
Yeah,
advance really far,
yeah. So I was my
and
basically I was gonna take the pawn, but I was like, wait a minute. Why do I even care if the pawn gets promoted? Because then I can just take it and get whatever you promoted it to. But I immediately, like later on in the game, I realized that there actually was a pretty big downside to it.
yeah. So I think we'll get into that when it happens. But
So
at this point, like certainly if I
right here, I think I realized that there is a downside. So I was like, oh crap. So I blocked it with a knight because I needed to get my other pieces out of the way to prevent the pawn from just forking the king and the bishop.
right, because you had wondered if the king would transform when he made a capture, and I said yes, he would. So if I move forward one more square, you'd be in check and would need to either move your king out of the way or capture it with a piece. And capturing would downgrade you to where you lose. I don't know if you'd want to lose your king. I would think no. Like, king would be pretty rough because you could only move forward. And certainly losing your queen or a bishop would not be a worthy exchange. So I was very happy to have you make that error.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember at this point when I realized um, your rook trapped behind the knight and
Yep.
the pawn left me a great line,
Yep.
um, which I think I would have been able to play much more effectively in normal chess.
Yeah.
And you'll see how
Yeah.
you counter it.
So this it's hard to see, but this is really interesting because right now he's attacking my. I believe that is the A file. Yeah, that's the A file. He's attacking my A rook, with his bishop, and in a normal match, I would just be completely lost here. I have no way to defend the rook without hanging another piece in the process. But since we're playing shapeshifter chess, you'll see this next move. Um, See if you can find the move that you would play in this game to prevent it. Seeing
And
as,
it
sorry, go ahead.
transform because it wouldn't have been. No, yeah, I was just gonna say like
There
so
it
that
is.
move, yeah, moving the pawn wouldn't be effective at all in normal
In a
chess.
normal game, yeah,
I
you would
just
just take
capture
it.
it,
Yeah,
and then rook would be in danger again. Whereas now, not only can I not take it, um, I actively have to flee the situation. And so here, moving it to another situation where I mean, you're kind of putting that knight under duress. To where I think in this circumstance, I was really looking forward, hoping that you would not do anything about that, because I guess this is one of those circumstances, like we said, where um, having my bishop there would have been useful. It would have put your king in check. Um, but in this version, also requiring you um, to take it and to kind of to lose another one of your pieces. Your other mate has that square. Also, it's also covering that square. So you
yeah,
could essentially you lose a knight and I lose a bishop. So maybe that's ultimately not um, a trade that I would want. But I think it opens up the possibilities to where maybe if you hadn't seen that, or if you decided to go another route, just kind of not thinking about it,
Yeah.
you would have wound up losing a piece that you certainly would not have expected. Um, and I think what we've discovered later on is how it makes you think about exchanges differently, to where, um, let's say I capture that I capture that knight with my bishop, and that becomes a knight. So essentially, whatever is the first piece you get captured in the chain, it remains that type of piece. So you're just kind of throwing all these other extraneous pieces at it, and you still wind up with, whoever comes out on
Yeah.
top, you still wind up with that first piece.
So this right here is really interesting. I decided to move my queen up into the pawn's path because I was hoping that maybe he would take it, and then I would be able to take his pawn, which had just promoted to a queen, with my king, and then I would have a queen king. Um, in retrospect, I think it would have been a bad thing if I did that, and so I'm glad that he didn't take it. So instead, we just traded. Um, we essentially just traded bishops there because he took my knight with his bishop. Wait, yeah. Oh no, no,
Yeah,
no. Yes, yeah. So you took
yeah. I
my
took your
knight with your
knight.
bishop, and it became a knight. Then I took that knight with my bishop, and it became a knight again. So we basically traded bishop.
Right. Yeah, and so here, like that pawn. I mean, you never would have moved your queen there in a normal game.
No.
But that pawn is clearly a dead man walking in a normal game as well. However, um, now I want your queen, or I want anyone to take that pawn, because it hurts you if, it's not going to be your bishop now that it's captured, but your queen's certainly not going to take it. You lose your
Yeah.
queen, and I
Well,
think
so here I
I think
decided I didn't want to not have a queen, so I took that I took that option away from you, and I moved my queen out of your attack.
yeah, I think a queen king would be helpful if you already managed to get a second queen. Like if you capture my
Mm,
queen and you're able to make it a queen king, or a pawn gets promoted at the end.
yeah.
But I think having your queen also be the piece that has to be checkmated, and not having a king, um, puts you at a disadvantage, because certainly that would limit the queen's power. You'd be much more cautious.
Yeah.
And I think
We just
a
traded
lot of my
pawns there, right?
strategy, yeah. Um, well, no, I think, you just had yours kind of exposed. That was the pawn that went to cover my bishop when I was attacking your rook.
Hmm.
So it was exposed. I didn't want to attack it with my bishop, obviously, for the reasons that we've stated. But then, gives you, yeah. I think my strategy for a lot of this was kind of realizing that the more pieces I could get promoted, essentially by, um, capturing some of your higher pieces, or also by demoting yours, if I kind of put you in a situation, if I could, either fork you, or make it so you had to take one of my pawns, certainly by check, or by, yeah, by putting a couple of your pieces in danger, and try to get you to lose as many of your more powerful pieces. If I can get you to, take a pawn with your bishop or your rook.
Yeah.
And I remember at this point you said fianchetto bishop.
Yeah.
And I believe I remarked that that was the first real chess term, aside from the names of the pieces that we've had on the channel. So congratulations to that. Now we got
Thank you, sir.
castling, which we did not make it in uh, either of our previous two games, Suicide Kings and, um, Third Century Crisis Chess. There we go. Because castling's impossible in the latter format. All right, now this was a move I was
Yeah.
very proud of.
I like this.
To this is Yeah, because I, especially attacking the queen as much as possible, because, just make her feel like, or make you feel like you have to use her to capture someone, because no matter what the queen turns into, it's a downgrade,
Yeah,
unless she's able to
and
capture the
then
other queen, of course.
so if you aren't paying attention, I just moved my knight because I basically said, you know what, I don't care that you're attacking my queen because if you take it, I'm just going to retake with my pawn. So in a normal game, obviously you would never do that, but since it's shapeshifter chess, that pawn defending my queen is essentially just a backup queen.
Yeah, and that's something that I really struggled to adapt to until the very end, and still probably not even in the final sequence of this for the lot of that piece becoming the same piece over and over. But I think it was also maybe because I'm not a great chess player, but
There you
um,
go. You just pushed your pawn. It's almost going to transform into something else.
yeah. And so here, I remember you were very excited because
Yeah,
you assumed I
yeah,
was going to promote it to a queen, and then you just capture it, get another queen. Uh, and then I, of course, realized that and did not want you to get a second queen. So
yeah.
I remember my strategy was to make it a knight, and so if your rooks captured it, it would be a downgrade. So I assume that's why you moved your knight to yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure that I could capture it with something that wasn't my rook.
Right. So of course your knight would then transform into my knight, but that for all intents and purposes is the same piece. And I think, I mean, it's rare that you'd have more than, I mean, I don't even often have rooks get promoted in a game, but certainly rare that you'd have more than one or two. But I think that's I don't know, is that more of an advantage this time, or do you think a disadvantage? And then maybe the more efficient strategy is to try to capture another piece. I'm certainly you're more cautious with all your non pawns than you are in a normal game.
I think this variant is so interesting just because it makes your pawns so much more valuable than they usually are.
Oh yeah,
Because they
it
can
really
become
does. I mean,
anything.
yeah, far more than just getting promoted to where that's if the opportunity presents itself, like it did here with that pawn in what's that D, then that's a I mean it's always an advantage if the pawn can get it. I don't know how we calculate the point value necessarily, but I would almost say like a pawn is not worth 1 point anymore, or it changes the value of 1 point to where um, the bishops and all the other pieces would not be worth three. They'd be worth two, or um, yeah, it's
Yeah,
really
it
interesting.
it makes it hard to judge who's winning in terms of material because material can just it's so much easier to gain material in this variant.
Yeah, so I
Causes a
think
blunder.
we exchange bishops, and then I take in two of your pawns with my pawns. Um, and so move my knight back to to defend it because I didn't want you that pawn at the bottom of the screen would have become a third knight for you. And I don't believe we got to the point where any of us had three of a particular um, type of piece.
No, but
I
I
know you had. I think if we play this once or twice more, I'm sure that we would get that, and that's certainly something I'd enjoy. Although I believe at some point, one or maybe both of us gets a bishop back, but it's on the same color square as the surviving one, which is an interesting situation to be in to have two white square bishops.
I would definitely be down to play this variant again. I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, we'll have to. I mean, certainly we want to play as many new ones as we can. If you really enjoyed this one, get down and that will because at some point we'll certainly be replaying from earlier versions where we're not going to have infinite games as I don't know infinite chess. Maybe we can brainstorm another workshop what that might be, and
Yeah.
and try it again in the future. An infinite pawn, I think we'd mentioned that.
Yeah, yeah,
We'll
yeah.
have to figure that out. All right, so
Traded
another
pawns, yeah.
pawn exchange happening.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think especially being up in the pawn game is important here. At least that's really what I was trying to go for. Um,
I
because
was
like we
going
said,
for the
pawns are so much
opposite.
more valuable. Interesting.
I was just going for mayhem. I, I wanted you to push the pawn just because I wanted craziness to happen. And I didn't care if I won.
Yeah, that I mean, I have certainly taken that approach to this series as well. I'm not going to spoil who wins this game for you, but I care much less about winning the
Oh,
versions here. Much less competitive.
this is really interesting. I just moved my knight forward right in front of the queen's like path of destruction, but obviously he doesn't want to take it because loses queen, and it would become a knight, which would be good for me. Which is just I feel like that's a really interesting thing about this mode is it gives your pieces so much more freedom because the queen almost becomes like non-existent in a way.
Yeah, she's very powerless. Um, I'd say really the most useful circumstance for her is if the king is in check, she's most likely to be able to do something about it.
Yeah.
But up until then, like I can't imagine any circumstance in a normal game where I move both my knights directly in front of the queen.
Woo! So I
But then,
believe you chose to
yes,
promote that to a knight here,
yes,
or
because you moved that knight away, so I knew.
yeah.
Oh, so here was a time where I got a third knight. So bully for me.
Oh yeah, you
Um,
did.
yeah. So now, kind of bluffing you to take it with a rook and lose something, but also your queen's now in danger. Well, of course, you the pawn is still defending it, so you get it back.
Yeah.
But this was kind of another move of really wanting to push the envelope and just see what happens. And I don't believe I captured your queen, although maybe I did. And
I don't think you do.
no,
Or maybe you
and so
do.
I
I
mean
can't
I
remember if you do or not.
yeah, I mean either way you get it right back. And I definitely don't. I know I tried to check your king, but from where that knight is positioned currently, not possible, unfortunately. Or fortunately, if you're rooting for Kyle in this game, which is your prerogative. Oh, I haven't thought about that until now. If anyone watching is going to have a rooting allegiance,
Mayhem.
maybe we get a Team Aidan. I mean, I think we should all hopefully be Team Mayhem. But if you want to be Team Aidan or Team Guest, that doesn't matter too much to me. As long as we're all Team Mayhem.
Hmm.
So moving that second knight behind the first, what was your strategy there? Just to put pressure on my pieces?
Um, I really like it when I have two knights kind of cooperating together to press an area of the board, because two knights are better than one.
You know,
um,
yeah, that they certainly cover a lot of ground. Um, I think. I
so
mean, obviously the queen is. Yeah, go ahead.
I think. Wait, what just happened?
So you use that
Oh,
knight to capture my bishop, and then became a bishop. So here's
yep,
where you got your second white square bishop.
yep.
Okay, and now I.
Take my
Oh, so this is what I
pawn.
did,
Oh yeah, you took my
and
pawn
it
with your
becomes a
knight to
pawn
check
again to check your
the
king,
king.
and you don't want to capture it with your rook or your king or your queen because then that piece would become a pawn. So I
Yeah,
was pretty proud of myself for that move.
I think I just moved king to
And
h2 though. Um,
yes, you do. Um, I mean, it's an easy move to get out of, but I think it's still just
it's still
having a
fun.
pawn there. Yeah, um, because it just really disrupts. I mean, it hems your rook in quite a bit. Doesn't quite hem the queen in, but it just, I mean, maybe it catches a slip in, but I mean, it also hems your king in, forcing them in that smaller corner of the board. The downside is it had to stop being a knight, so it only got promoted for a single turn. And it's not something with chess.
So
I was pretty. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the only reason that me letting you push all your pawns so far, I think the only reason that worked for me is because me ignoring those moves kind of allowed me to get other piece development on the board. Where
Mm.
in a normal game, that pawn being pushed so far would be such a disadvantage that it wouldn't be worth the development, because it would always be a constant threat of, oh no, he's going to get another queen.
Yeah, well, it's certainly in the circumstances as they wound up developing, where you had your rooks connected on um, certain, it developed into not much of a threat. But oh yeah, here we
Yeah, so
go.
you did end up taking the queen there.
Yeah, so once my pawn took your pawn, it put
Yeah.
you into. I'm sure. So now I have a.
Right,
I did
right.
wind up with two pawn and queen,
You took the
and
defending pawn so that
yeah.
then you could take
However,
the
I think
queen.
I see the move that you made to yeah.
Yeah, I just took it with the
Alas,
knight. It was still a good move by you, but I still lost 2 points of material from taking with my knight.
right? Yeah. So this is such a weird conception of it. Where if this was a normal game, I would have moved a pawn, captured your queen, and then lost that pawn. Which is effectively what happened here. But I also briefly had a queen in the interim, and that's just odd.
Yeah.
To where so you didn't have a queen and then you got it back. And obviously that pawn that's facing it down 2 squares away would be in a
So
world.
basically, what just happened was essentially you took my knight with your pawn. We traded. Like in a regular
Yeah,
game, that's
essentially,
what would have happened.
which is yeah still a good trade for me. And I'm happy about it. But okay, honestly, not super sure what I was thinking there.
Yeah, I think this move was kind of like the nail in the coffin. Honestly, you left. I
Yeah,
feel like this move left so many openings, like for me.
yeah, and my thought was I could capture your queen with my queen, and if you did that to me, I would capture it with a pawn and take it back.
Yeah,
Um, but not great strategically ultimately. I definitely felt that when you took my bishop with your knight and gained a bishop there, that really did kind of mess with my plans because I love using my bishops,
yeah.
and that was the second of mine. Certainly, if another pawn got promoted, or if I was able to capture your surviving bishop, that would have been an advantage. But yeah, it doesn't excuse that very odd and unorthodox move. And that's almost one that could have happened in real chess, because circumstances would have been similar. Well, I think you just would have moved away rather than. Um,
I think right now I'm deciding whether I want to check you with my bishop or attack your queen with one of my rooks. And neither of those things. I checked your, which actually
yeah,
might have
which is
been the best move.
yeah, I think so. Um,
It checks your
I,
king
I
and
mean,
also gets my queen completely out of the scope of your attackers.
yeah, there is nothing, no, certainly nothing I can do about that, and no way I could defend it. So the only thing I have to do is to move my
I didn't
move my rook.
understand this
Not
move. I thought you were just going to move your king into the corner. And
I
instead you
certainly in hindsight that's what I should have.
kind of just pinned your rook. Now your rook like now it's going to take you 2 moves to get that rook back into like able to do anything with.
Yeah, and then that was such a good counter from you. Um, because my thinking on it was if your even if your queen takes it, it's a downgrade, but if your bishop
Yeah.
takes it, it's an upgrade.
Yeah.
You know, I could still take it with my knight. Um, so I thought, you know, I had two kind of possible moves to defend there.
Yep.
Um, and
Okay. Push your.
so here's where I was thinking, because you see that the pawn or the pawn that's already there that was briefly a knight facing off. And so I didn't understand that move from you because I'm thinking I move that pawn down. I can now take it with a rook and get promoted. And to me, you sounds like we're in the good place. You fork yourself with that to where I can move that pawn down and take either one of the rooks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what was your thinking moving? Oh, it was to threaten the queen, clearly.
Yeah. I just wanted to threaten the queen because you can't take it or you mean like it. Well,
Right.
not. Yeah, I do. Oh, that one. Um, and I wanted to point out that you actually made a brilliant move with that pawn push. Is that your last move? That pawn move?
Yeah, it was.
So my next move was actually going to be moving my second light squared bishop behind the the first one, so that I would have a triple battery on your king. So I would have two light squared bishops and a queen all down that single diagonal, and I was just gonna batter your just slam my way through. But that pawn move completely shut that down. So I was kind of disappointed, but I was actually really proud of you.
Well, the thing is, I think the two is plenty. Certainly in regular chess, it would have been. So I don't. What I do here is. All right. Guess I didn't make up my mind there.
I forget what you do here.
I know that pawn eventually gets down to the end is kind of how he forced the end of the game here. All right.
Oh yeah, right. So you're trying to battery the rook and the queen down that file.
Right. I'm trying to battery protect there to where you're threatening with one bishop, with the queen, potentially with that second bishop. And so I'm thinking the more pieces I can stack in there, then I'll come out on top of this piece exchange.
Oh,
Um,
so you were trying to defend with that move.
yeah, I was thinking, um, you know, your bishop takes my rook, becomes a rook. Um, I can take it with my knight, that becomes a rook. You can take it with your queen, that becomes a rook. Then I can take it with my queen, and that becomes a rook. So it would
Interesting.
be or I could take it with my king and become a king rook.
So I actually thought that the intention of that move was because you still have that pawn down the board is actually a knight. So I thought you were threatening um moving that back to g4 as a check. Um,
Well, no, that pawn is a pawn now. Remember, it was a knight for one turn, and then it captured your pawn and became a pawn
you're
again.
right. It is a pawn.
Yeah.
Okay. I think so. I was actually thinking that was still a knight during the game, so that's probably why I thought that was an offensive move.
Okay. Oh, is that why you moved your rook there, rather?
Yeah, I thought it was a knight.
Yeah, I guess to me that felt like you were just making my job easier, to where I'll move that pawn forward and then potentially gain a rook because I know, you know, normal
So
game I'd be worried about that.
yeah, so that rook move was actually a blunder on my part. I realized afterwards that I should have probably just slid it over one because it pretty much would have been an immediate checkmate if I slid over my rook to the c file. I would just be threatening back ranking your king in like two moves. So I kind of missed that. but it still works out
Oh yeah.
because even if you push that pawn to threaten my rook, I can just go to the c file afterwards. I think is what I
Right.
do.
Yeah. Well, I remember that I make it down one more, and there's a bit of a piece exchange. And I remember we had a long back and forth about which one was I gonna move with.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And so I'm looking forward to seeing that again. And I still can't play out the whole sequence in my head because I was just so unsure if I was gonna come out on top of that exchange.
I move it up.
Which I assume was just to get out of that danger from that pawn.
So that move was actually had two purposes. One was to get out of the danger from the pawn, but also because I wanted to keep it on that file so that I could move my other rook over to the same file on the d file and have two rooks pressuring that back rank on the king.
Okay. Yeah, so I think your bishop on is kind of hidden behind my queen there, but I think for a lot of our viewers can see probably that the end is nigh for me.
Okay, so I
Just
just
based
moved
on
my rook out of the way of.
right. So what
I think you
what did I
push.
have a?
I think you push the f pawn, and then I take it with my.
Oh yeah, so that's right. Is I wasn't trying to take a piece. I just what piece is gonna move forward first to become. I think I was still pretty sure that it would become a knight. That then you would move with your rook, and I take it with my.
I think what you ended up doing is pushing.
Yeah, I believe so.
Right now, I'm
Um,
explaining to you that there's a move I want you to do, and I don't know if you're going to do it. And I was explaining to you that if you do it, you might win the game, but if you don't do it, you're probably going to lose. And you were like, those are some pretty high stakes.
yeah, I wish I had seen it the same way that you did, because it. Yeah, I think I was just thinking if I end. So I was trying to get it into the C1. So I was trying to move the pawn that's in C, because my thought was if it ends up, I move that forward, it becomes a knight. Then that puts your king in check. You take it with your rook. I move my other bishop forward. So
So
I went with the opposite. Into I and I honestly don't think I could have told you my reasoning there, but so there becomes a knight, which I mean it's forking your bishop and your rook, which is good. And so I was really still going under the assumption that you immediately take it with your rook.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh, I was showing you what I wanted you to do.
yeah,
I was like, what just happened? I'm just
yeah.
explaining
I
to
was I
him
was
that
a
I
little
wanted him to push the f pawn so that it would turn into a knight and
yeah,
check my king. Although I don't really know what would have happened from there. That's just really what I wanted to happen. Would have been cool.
sure. So yeah, that is it's technically not checkmate, but it is about to be in one more move.
Yeah,
And
it's this game
I
kind of.
gave it a real good think. Yeah,
This
so I
this
think
this would have been a
well,
respectful time to resign the game.
it certainly would have been, but seeing as it was only one more move. Oh no, what? Oh yeah, because I moved my queen in the way. That's right. So hey, you got a second queen in the final stages there.
Woo!
Oh, or did you? Oh no, you were just explaining my previous
I
move.
was
That
explaining
would have been
I was explaining that I wanted to do a triple battery earlier. I think.
yeah, because it was still my move at this point. All right, so let's give it a rating 1 out of 10 for how broken and how fun.
10 out of 10 broken, 10 out of 10 fun. This variant was so exciting, so interesting.
Absolutely.
I would
Yeah,
definitely play
we
it
both had a
again.
great time playing this for sure. Um,
So,
yeah, I think I agree as well. 10 out of 10 broken makes you think about it in a completely different way, and just a blast. I mean, I think we both made a couple mistakes. I certainly think I made more than
yeah.
you,
Oh,
which is why
yeah.
you won.
Um,
But great time was
I
had
think
by all.
I think your mistakes were more fundamental, and my mistakes were more. You, your mistakes were like in the sense of regular chess, like blunders. My mistakes were like, oops, I probably shouldn't have done that in the terms of shapeshifter. Like I shouldn't have let that pawn get pushed so far. I let you get way too far into my side of the board, and it made things a lot more difficult for me. The
Yeah.
handshake.
Which looks like it was our left hands, but it wasn't. Yeah, I think I would agree with you there. I'm not sure how much broken chess will help me improve at regular chess, but I should probably try to do that on my own time to
Yeah, I think
keep high
regular
quality
chess.
products coming out there.
I think regular chess knowledge definitely helped me in this variant.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But
All right, well,
yeah,
all right, well, thanks for coming on, Kyle. I'm sure we'll have you on again. And I just said
yes,
goodbye in the
would
original
love to.
recording, so goodbye, everyone. See you next week.
Later.